The transport ship shuddered violently as it broke through the atmosphere of Zythera 9. Through the thick glass of the cockpit, I stared down at the training facility below, my heart hammering against my ribs. Massive towers of metal and glass pierced the alien sky like jagged spires, and beyond them, open arenas teemed with creatures of every horrifying shape and size. This place was infamous across the galaxy, a graveyard for ambition. Countless cadets had arrived here, but only a handful ever survived the first week. I tightened my gloves, the synthetic leather creaking, and took a deep, shaky breath. I was just a kid, barely 20 and from Earth, a planet the galaxy's elite civilizations considered a quaint, primitive backwater. But I was here, chosen for some reason I couldn't yet fathom. A potent cocktail of raw fear and electric excitement pulsed through my veins. As the transport landed with a final, low hiss, I watched the other cadets disembark. They were titans, aliens from warrior worlds, their steps heavy and sure. They exchanged quiet, confident glances, their very presence a display of power. I felt like a child among giants. My boots clanged softly on the metal deck as I shuffled along, trying my best to project a calmness I was nowhere near feeling. A voice loud and sharp as cracking steel echoed through the landing hall. "Welcome, cadets, I am Instructor Thaler. Here you will face your greatest challenge, not just of skill, but of courage. Tomorrow, each of you will bond with a creature. Choose carefully. Brute force will not win. Only trust and connection will ensure your survival." A wave of murmurs rippled through the cadets. Some laughed, others scoffed. My stomach twisted into a knot. Bond with a creature? I'd never even seen alien wildlife up close, let alone tried to connect with one. And judging by the massive, sharp-toothed monsters I could see prowling behind reinforced fences, a little experience would have been nice. "Some of you will fail." Thaler's voice cut through the noise, his eyes scanning the line of new arrivals. "Some will be eaten, some will be broken, and a very few, may rise to greatness." His gaze locked onto me, cold and piercing. "Humanity," he said, the word dripping with disdain, "may surprise us all." We were led to the barracks. I lay on the narrow, cold bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the symphony of the night. Creatures howled in the distance, their deep, guttural growls rattling the metal walls of our flimsy shelter. Sleep was a distant dream. Every shadow seemed to writhe and stretch, alive with unseen threats. The stories were true. These creatures weren't just dangerous. They were intelligent. The next morning we were marched into the bonding arena. It was a vast, circular enclosure, its high walls of reinforced alloy shimmering under the alien sun. And in the center, they waited. Beasts of every kind, massive brutes covered in scales, fur or armored hides. Creatures with eyes that seemed to peer directly into your soul, and everywhere the glint of razor-sharp claws and teeth. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. The other cadets stepped forward, radiating confidence. One by one, they tried to approach the creatures, and one by one, they were brutally rejected. Shrieks and roars tore through the air. Cadets scrambled, ran, and fell. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my chest. I had no plan, no special training. All I had was the desperate hope that I wouldn't die. Then, a shadow shifted near me. A creature larger than any other in the arena stepped forward. Its skin was dark, glimmering like wet obsidian. Its eyes were golden, ancient, and impossibly intelligent. I froze. The other cadets instinctively backed away, their whispers turning nervous. Instructor Thaler's voice boomed again. "This one is yours." Sweat trickled down my back. The creature studied me, its long tail flicking slowly, its head tilting as if it were sizing me up for a meal. I remembered what my old mentor on Earth once told me. Speak with courage, not with fear. I took a breath and took a single step forward, keeping my hands open and visible. The creature let out a low growl, a sound that vibrated up from the ground and into my bones. I stopped. I waited, holding its gaze, fighting every instinct that screamed at me to run. The arena fell silent, the only sound the distant cries of other failed attempts. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The creature circled me, sniffing the air, its golden eyes never leaving mine. My heart was a runaway train, but I stood my ground. Then, slowly, impossibly, it lowered its massive head to my shoulder. My eyes widened in shock. I reached out a trembling hand, hesitated for a second, then touched its scaly snout. The beast exhaled, a warm, heavy gust of air against my skin. It wasn't aggression. It was acceptance. The other cadets stared in disbelief. I could hear their whispers. Impossible. Even Instructor Thaler's stoic expression cracked, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. Interesting, he murmured. As the sun began to set, the creature and I remained together in the center of the arena. The bond was fragile, but it was real. I didn't understand it, but I felt a spark of connection that went beyond words. This was only the beginning. Suddenly, a low, menacing howl echoed from the far side of the arena. My creature stiffened, a soft growl rumbling in its chest. My heart leaped into my throat. Something was out there, watching us, waiting. Thaler's voice came again, calm but powerful. Tomorrow, the true test begins. Only those who trust their bond will survive. I looked down at the creature, who was now nuzzling me gently, and I whispered almost to myself, "We will face it together." In that moment I realized survival here wasn't about strength or skill. It was about heart. The sun dipped below the horizon, and as darkness consumed the arena, I knew that somewhere in those shadows, our real adventure had only just begun. The night on Zithera 9 was an ink-black canvas, broken only by the ghostly light of its twin moons. Here, in the bonding arena, every shadow seemed to hold a secret. Beside me, my newly bonded creature, Kor, paced restlessly. His muscles were coiled springs and his eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. The air was thick with tension, the rustle of alien leaves, the distant roar of some unknown beast, the whisper of the wind. It all felt like a countdown. I'd survived the first day, but the real test was yet to come. Instructor Thaler had told us the creatures would choose their partners. He conveniently left out what happened if you were rejected. The whispers among the cadets were chilling. Those who failed were taken away only to return different, broken. Suddenly, a flicker of movement in the darkness. A slender, multi-limbed creature lunged from the shadows, its claws screeching against the metal wall of the arena. Kor instantly moved between me and the intruder, a low, warning growl rumbling in his chest. The strange creature hissed, its form a nightmarish silhouette, before melting back into the darkness as silently as it appeared. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Kor nudged me, a solid, reassuring presence. I wasn't alone in this. The next morning, Instructor Thaler gathered us. His eyes, cold and calculating, swept across our faces. "Bonding is only the beginning," he announced, his voice echoing in the vast hall. "Today your creatures will reveal their true nature. Today you face the first trial." A massive door ground open, revealing a chamber filled with shifting, dancing shadows. This is the shadow maze. It will test your mind, your body, and your trust. If your bond falters, it will be your undoing. A nervous murmur rippled through the cadets. I placed a hand on Kor's scaled arm. He responded with a soft growl, as if sensing the fear coiling in my gut. Together we stepped into the chilling, oppressive air of the maze. Illusions writhed on the walls, and pairs of glowing eyes watched from every corner. With every step the floor threatened to give way, and then it did. Panels dropped away, revealing spiked pits below. But before I could even scream, Kor leaped, carrying me effortlessly across the chasm. The walls began to close in, twisting into impossible shapes. My heart hammered against my ribs. A disembodied voice slithered through the air, low and hypnotic. "Leave, or perish." I froze, but Kor's deep growl shook the very foundations of the maze, and we pushed forward. We faced illusions of fallen comrades, spectral beasts, and corridors that led to nowhere, all designed to shatter our courage. But each time my resolve wavered, Kor was there, a steadying force. Finally, at the heart of the maze, we found it. A glowing orb, pulsing with raw energy. As I reached for it, the shadows around us erupted, coalescing into monstrous figures that towered over us. Panic clawed at my throat, but instead of screaming, I did something unexpected. I whistled a simple, clear tune. Core answered with a powerful roar, and an energy, a light radiated from our bond, pushing the darkness back. Instructor Thaler appeared at the edge of the chamber, his expression unreadable. "Interesting," he murmured. "The human heart, it is stronger than expected. You rely on trust. And that may be the key." The shadows receded, and the orb floated into my trembling hands. As we exited the maze, exhausted but victorious, a low hum echoed from deep within the facility. A distant door clicked open, revealing a corridor lined with glowing ancient symbols. Core growled, a clear warning. Something was waiting. "Whatever it is," I whispered, my voice barely audible, "we face it together." And I knew, somewhere in the shadows, unseen eyes were watching. We weren't just insignificant cadets anymore. We were becoming something more. Morning, everyone. Hope you're ready for a story. Today we're diving into a world where survival means trusting a beast more than you trust yourself. The next morning, the cadets gathered in the central plaza. Instructor Thaler's voice boomed across the massive chamber. "Today you leave the safety of the facility. You will enter the wild zone. Each of you, with your bonded creature, must retrieve a vital artifact from the heart of the jungle. Only those who survive will advance." A nervous energy swept through the cadets. The wild zone was the stuff of legends. Dense alien forests, teeming with predators, hidden traps, and storms that appeared out of nowhere. Many had entered before. Far fewer had returned. Jarek looked at Core. The beast's golden eyes met his, a silent promise passing between them. They could face anything together. But even with that thought, Jarek felt a cold knot of fear tighten in his stomach. The entrance to the wild zone was a towering wall of twisted vines and massive glistening leaves. Stepping through it was like entering another world. The air was thick, shimmering with heat and humidity. Instantly the forest felt alive. Shadows danced between the ancient trees. Strange whispers echoed from all around, and every single step felt like it could trigger some hidden, deadly mechanism. It didn't take long. Suddenly, the first predator burst from the undergrowth, a huge creature with 6 limbs, each tipped with razor-sharp claws. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent red light, and it snarled, a sound that grated on Jarek's nerves. Chaos erupted. Cadets around him panicked. One screamed, and the creature lunged. Before Jarek could even react, Core was in motion. A low growl rumbled in his chest as he spun to face the threat, placing himself squarely in front of Jarek, claws slashing the air. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. Jarek's mind raced. Think, move, trust. He let out a sharp, piercing whistle. Core responded instantly, leaping forward in perfect sync with the sound. The predator faltered, confused by the seamless bond between human and beast. It was the opening they needed. With a coordinated strike, Core slammed into the creature's leg, sending it sprawling to the ground. Adrenaline surging, Jarek grabbed a heavy fallen branch and used it to shove the beast away, giving them precious seconds to regroup. The rest of the journey through the wild zone was just as grueling. Giant whip-like vines lashed out at them from the canopy. Carnivorous plants with snapping jaws tried to pull them under, and swarms of glowing insects descended on them in clouds. But with every step, the bond between Jarek and Core grew stronger, more intuitive. Core would anticipate dangers before they even appeared, nudging Jarek aside or leaping to clear a treacherous path. Jarek started to feel something incredible. He could almost see the forest through Core's senses, feeling the threats before he saw them. Hours bled into one another. The alien sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of violet and orange. Finally, they reached the heart of the jungle. There, rising from the dense foliage, was a stone pedestal, and resting atop it was the artifact, a glowing crystal that pulsed with a strange, mesmerizing energy. Jarek approached cautiously, every nerve on high alert. This felt too easy. It had to be a trap, And he was right. The ground suddenly shook with a violent tremor. A new predator emerged from the shadows, dwarfing anything Jarek had ever seen. Its jaws were lined with blades like obsidian shards, its eyes burned like molten fire, and it moved with a terrifying, unnatural speed. Screams echoed through the clearing. Cadets were thrown aside like dolls, some injured, others worse. Kor let out a defiant roar that seemed to shake the very trees. In that moment, Jarek felt not fear, but a surge of pure courage. He whistled again, this time a long, commanding note that cut through the chaos. Kor charged. Their movements were perfectly synchronized, a beautiful, deadly dance. The massive predator lunged and the two fought as one entity, human and beast mind and muscle, working as a single unstoppable force. With a final earth-shattering strike, Kor knocked the creature staggering back. That was his chance. Jarek lunged forward and grabbed the crystal, a strange warmth instantly flooding through him. The predator let out a final frustrated hiss before melting back into the shadows. Exhausted but alive, Jarek looked at Kor, his heart still hammering against his ribs. "We did it," he whispered, his voice hoarse. But as they turned to leave, a low rumble shook the forest floor. Trees cracked and splintered, and a deep, resonant voice echoed from the distance, a voice that seemed to come from the jungle itself. "You are stronger than expected, human. But the trial has only begun." Jarek's pulse skyrocketed. Kor growled low, muscles tensing, ready for the next fight. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. The wild zone was only the beginning. The universe was bigger, darker, and far more dangerous than Jarek had ever imagined. Surviving the wild zone was one thing, but returning to the facility felt different. Kor and I were battered, but we were alive. The other cadets who made it back were few, their faces etched with the same fear and shock that still pulsed through my veins. We had seen the true face of the wild zone, and it wasn't a training ground. It was a hunting ground. Instructor Thaler was waiting for us, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. His gaze swept over the survivors, but it lingered on me. "Most would have failed," he said, his voice a low rumble. "But you?" A strange, almost smile touched his lips. "You have potential beyond expectation." His words should have been reassuring, but they sent a chill down my spine. Later, as I walked the sterile corridors, something caught my eye. A door, usually hidden, was slightly ajar, a faint blue light flickering from within. My heart pounded, but curiosity was a stronger force. I slipped inside, Kor padding silently behind me. The room was a labyrinth of screens and consoles, all alive with alien symbols I couldn't comprehend. My gaze landed on one particular screen. It showed the creatures of the facility tracking their movements, even displaying what looked like their thoughts. And then I saw it. Files labeled Project Ascendancy. Images flashed across the screen. Creatures from the wild zone and others I'd never seen before, things from nightmares. The notes detailed genetic enhancements, behavior modification, and something far more sinister. We weren't just being trained, we were being tested. Tested against creatures engineered for war. A sudden hiss from the shadows made me whip around. A sleek black creature emerged, its body shimmering like liquid night. But its eyes, they were intelligent, disturbingly human. It studied me for a long, silent moment before melting back into the darkness. Kor let out a low growl. I finally understood. The danger wasn't just out there in the wild. It was right here, in the very walls of the facility. And maybe in the people who ran it. Sleep became a distant memory. The corridors seemed to whisper secrets in the dead of night. I'd catch glimpses of movement in the periphery, shadows that watched and waited. The bond with Kor was my anchor, a constant source of courage, but even that couldn't quiet the growing unease in my soul. The next day, Thaler gathered us in the main hall. "You have survived the wild zone," he announced, his voice echoing with authority. "But now you face your first real choice. Some of you will be tested against the facility itself. My pulse hammered against my ribs. I looked at Core. His golden eyes were steady, unwavering. We were ready. Thaler continued, "Inside this facility are secrets your mind may not comprehend. You will face illusions, traps, and guardians of knowledge. Trust your bond. Trust your courage. The creatures are your allies, but the facility may not be." As we were led deeper into the inner chambers, strange symbols on the walls began to glow, pulsing with a life of their own. Every step felt heavy, as if the very air was watching me. This wasn't training anymore, it was a trial of mind, heart, and spirit. Hours later, Core and I stood before a massive door covered in alien runes. Our bond pulsed, a silent alarm ringing in my mind. The door creaked open on its own, revealing a chamber humming with a strange, crackling energy. Floating orbs cast eerie light, flashing with images of cadets who had come before us. Whispers slithered through the air, chilling and indecipherable. Then a figure emerged from the shadows. It was not human, not creature, but something else entirely. Part alien, part machine, all terrifying. Its voice wasn't spoken. It echoed directly in my mind. "You are far stronger than we expected, human. But the real trial begins when the facility tests you, not the creatures." Core tensed, a deep growl rumbling in his chest. As we took a step forward, the door slammed shut behind us, plunging us into the humming chamber. Shadows swirled, twisting into monstrous forms. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but a strange courage surged through me. This was more than a test. This was the start of a war for survival, for knowledge, and maybe for the future of us all. And somewhere in the darkness I could feel something watching us, and it was smiling. The morning air was tense, so thick you could cut it with a knife. We, the remaining cadets, gathered in the central plaza. Instructor Thaler's voice, cold as steel, cut through the silence. "Today," he announced, "you leave the safety of the facility. Your mission, retrieve the obsidian core from the shattered expanse, rely on your bond. Fail, and you do not return." I felt my hand tighten on Core's scaled arm. The wild zone had been tough, but the shattered expanse? The stories said it was merciless. A place of endless chasms, colossal predators, and storms that shredded metal like paper. Boarding the transport, my heart hammered against my ribs. Every nerve screamed at me to turn back. Core, my bonded companion, was a mirror of my own tension. Calm, but hyper-alert. Our time in the wild zone had forged our bond into something powerful. It felt like I could almost read his thoughts, anticipate his every move. We had survived before, and we would survive again. The transport doors hissed open, revealing a hellscape worse than any rumor. Jagged cliffs clawed at a sky burning red with chemical storms. Rivers of molten metal carved paths through the broken land. We stepped out onto the unstable ground, every footfall a gamble against a collapsing ledge. Danger found us almost instantly. A swarm of flying predators, their wings shimmering like freshly sharpened blades, descended upon us. Panic erupted. Cadets fired their weapons wildly, but the blasts barely singed the creatures. In a blur of motion, Core leaped, his roar tearing through the chaos. He intercepted one midair, slamming it into the fractured ground with brutal force. I ducked behind his powerful form and let out a sharp whistle. Core reacted instantly, spinning to strike another predator just as it dove for me. It was a perfect, seamless movement. We were a single unit. The hours that followed were a blur of constant, heart-stopping peril. We dodged lava flows, navigated collapsing cliffs, and pushed through bizarre energy storms that tested the limits of our training and our bond. Many cadets fell behind, lost to the unforgiving environment, but Core and I moved as one. Our connection was no longer just about trust. It was a living, breathing force, dedicated to survival. Finally, through the haze, we saw it. The central chasm. There, floating above a pedestal of black rock, was the obsidian core. Its glow pulsed with a steady, rhythmic light, like a sleeping heart. As I cautiously approached the pedestal, a deep rumbling started, a feeling that came from the very bones of the expanse. Then, a roar that split the air and shook us to our core. A massive beast erupted from the molten depths below. Its body was a fortress of jagged obsidian-like plates, and its eyes glowed with pure molten fury. The other cadets froze. Some ran, some were just paralyzed with terror. But a low growl rumbled in Kor's chest, and I felt our bond surge with defiant energy. I whistled, a sharp, clear command he now knew by instinct. Together we charged. The obsidian beast lunged, its massive jaws snapping shut with a shower of molten sparks. Kor, with impossible speed, dodged and struck at the creature's legs. I grabbed a heavy metal rod from the debris and hurled it, a desperate distraction. It worked. For a split second, the beast turned its head, and that was all Kor needed. He leaped onto its back, his claws digging in for purchase. We fell into a rhythm born of desperation and instinct. My commands, his dodges, my distractions, his strikes. We were a symphony of survival. The beast roared in frustration and pain, thrashing wildly, but finally it collapsed, defeated. I stood there, my chest heaving, every muscle screaming in exhaustion. I reached out and grabbed the obsidian core, feeling its strange rhythmic energy pulse through my hand. But our victory was fleeting. The ground began to shake violently, not with tremors, but with intent. It felt like the land itself was waking up, furious at our intrusion. Spouts of lava erupted around us, cliffs crumbled into the chasms, and the energy storms converged into a single swirling vortex of destruction. We ran. Kor and I leaped from one crumbling rock to the next, our bond the only thing guiding us, keeping us alive through the absolute chaos. Finally, we reached stable ground, gasping for breath. I looked back at the horizon, at the storm-racked expanse, the obsidian core glowing warmly in my hands. But I knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. We had awakened something out there, something ancient and far more dangerous than any beast. Kor nudged me gently, his presence a solid anchor in my fear. I whispered, "We survive, together." And I knew, with a chilling certainty, that somewhere deep in the shadows of the expanse, unseen eyes were watching. We had passed this test, but the universe had only just begun to challenge us. Back at the facility, a strange tension hung in the air, thick and heavy. We'd survived the expanse, brought back the obsidian core, but something was wrong. Cadets were whispering, casting suspicious glances. The victory felt hollow. Instructor Thalor gathered us, his voice calm but firm. "Survival is only the beginning," he said. "The true test is trust." Just then, alarms screamed through the halls. Red lights flashed everywhere. "Someone's tampering with the obsidian core," a cadet yelled. Chaos. My heart hammered against my ribs as I saw him, Rylan, one of our own, trying to steal the core. He thought it would grant him some ultimate power. Kor let out a low growl, moving to shield me. "We can't let him get away!" I shouted, and the chase was on. The corridors of our training facility turned into a war zone. Rylan summoned his creature, a four-legged monster with a whip-like tail, and it attacked with brutal force. Kor and I moved as one, dodging, countering, our movements synchronized from countless hours of training. The facility itself seemed to be coming apart. Panels exploded, sparks rained down, and the alarms were a constant deafening shriek. Kor was incredible, leaping over debris, shielding me from collapsing walls while I used my wits to turn Rylan's own traps back on him. We fought through the chaos, hallway after hallway. Finally, we cornered him. Humiliated and defeated, Rylan retreated, but his final words sent a chill down my spine. "This is far from over, human." I was catching my breath, clutching the obsidian core, when a deep hum started to vibrate through the very walls of the facility. The lights flickered wildly, shadows twisting into unnatural shapes. Then a voice echoed, but it wasn't Thalor's, or any humans. It was ancient, powerful, and it spoke from the heart of the building itself. "You have proven strong, human," it resonated. "But now, you face the truth." My blood ran cold. The voice continued, explaining everything. The facility wasn't a school. It was a sentinel, a guardian of knowledge older than the stars. Every trial, every creature, every danger. It was all designed to prepare us for something called the Ascendancy. The creatures weren't just monsters. They were guardians. The wild zone, the expanse. It was all a crucible to forge humans capable of facing challenges beyond our wildest nightmares. Core growled again, sensing the deep, alien intelligence that permeated the very structure around us. I looked at my companion and realized our bond, as strong as it was, might not be enough. We would need something more. The kind of courage and ingenuity that only a human could provide. Instructor Thaler appeared at my side, his face grim. "The ancient intelligence is awakening," he said. "Your bond will be tested like never before. The fate of all cadets rests in your hands. Remember, a human heart often triumphs where raw strength fails." I stared into Core's intelligent eyes. We'd faced monsters and betrayal together. But this was different. This was the real test. Somewhere deep within the facility, an ancient consciousness was watching, waiting, its focus entirely on us. I took a deep breath and whispered, "Whatever comes, we face it together." And in the darkness, that ancient intelligence pulsed, its gaze fixed on the unbreakable bond between a human and his beast. The game had just changed. Thanks for watching this chapter of our story. The inner chamber of the facility pulsed with raw, untamed energy. Shadows danced across the walls, writhing and twisting into shapes that seemed terrifyingly alive. The ancient intelligence had fully awakened, and its immense presence pressed down on Jarek's mind like a physical weight. Every frantic beat of his heart echoed through the chamber, each breath a conscious struggle against the tide of fear threatening to pull him under. Core's low growl resonated through the room, a deep, guttural vibration that anchored Jarek to one undeniable truth. They were stronger together. The massive creature pressed close, its powerful muscles tensed, its eyes glowing like molten gold in the dim light. Jarek clutched the obsidian core, its strange energy pulsing against his palm like a second alien heartbeat. Then, from the swirling shadows, the intelligence spoke. Its voice was a chilling paradox, both a whisper inside his own mind and a booming echo that filled the chamber. "Human, your species has survived this long by mere chance. Courage alone is insufficient. Prove your worth or perish." Instantly, the walls of the chamber shifted and groaned. Massive shapes of light and shadow surged upwards, coalescing into monstrous guardians. Their ethereal claws glinted with captured energy, their eyes burning with an intelligence far older than any human mind could comprehend. A cold wave of fear washed over Jarek, but he did not falter. He met Core's golden gaze. "We survive, together," he whispered, his voice firm. The battle began in a blur of motion. Jarek dodged colossal strikes that could shatter stone, while Core became a whirlwind of instinct, leaping with impossible grace, its claws and teeth tearing through the energy-formed guardians. Jarek, in turn, used the obsidian core, focusing its rhythmic pulses, channeling its power with a precision he didn't know he possessed. Together, human and beast moved as one. A perfect symphony of courage, intelligence, and unwavering trust. The ancient intelligence tested them relentlessly. Every attack, every mind-bending illusion, every challenge was designed to break him. At one point, a brutal blow sent Jarek flying across the chamber, the core slipping from his desperate grasp. But before it could hit the ground, Core leapt, snatching it from midair and gently nudging Jarek back to his feet. The bond they shared radiated a power that the intelligence had clearly not anticipated. Human ingenuity fused with the raw, instinctual understanding of a loyal creature. "You rely on connection," the intelligence hissed, its voice laced with a new, unfamiliar tone of surprise. "But connection alone cannot save you." Jarek's eyes blazed with defiance. "It can. It will," he shouted back, his voice ringing with conviction. He let out a sharp, commanding whistle that cut through the chaos. Core answered instantly, their movements synchronizing with breathtaking speed. Together they charged, a unified force of will and power, dodging attacks and striking with deadly precision. For the first time, the ancient intelligence hesitated. It was beginning to understand that the human heart was different. It saw that courage, compassion, and trust were forces that defied its cold logic. Forces beyond mere brute strength or intellect. Humans could inspire loyalty, create unbreakable bonds and rise above the impossible. With one final desperate surge of energy, Jarek pressed the obsidian core against the largest guardian, channeling their combined will into the artifact. A blinding explosion of light erupted, shattering the shadows. The intelligence recoiled, its powerful presence retreating into the depths of the facility. The guardians vanished. Silence fell. Jarek and Core stood in the center of the chamber, breathing heavily, victorious. The obsidian core in Jarek's hand now glowed with a steady, calm light. From a newly opened doorway, Instructor Thalor appeared, his face holding a rare expression of genuine approval. "You have done what many species could not," he said, his voice quiet but full of weight. "Humanity has risen." Word of Jarek and Core's triumph spread like wildfire. Other cadets, who once looked at humans with disdain, now watched in awe as the boy and his creature moved with unmatched synchronicity. Fear had turned to respect. Humans were no longer the weakest link. They were a force to be reckoned with, capable of rising to any challenge through courage, trust, and heart. As Jarek gazed out over the sprawling facility, he whispered to Core, "We did it. We proved it. Together." The magnificent creature nudged him in response, its golden eyes shining like newly born stars. But far beyond the walls of their academy, in the silent, cold expanse of space, new whispers traveled through the cosmos. Earth is no longer insignificant. Humanity has awakened. And so, the legend of Jarek and Core began. The story of a human who could stand beside the strongest creatures, face the deadliest intelligence, and rise victorious through courage, connection, and heart. The universe would never underestimate humanity again. The facility was quiet now, an unnatural stillness hanging in the air. The trials, the wild zone, the vast expanse, and that final terrifying confrontation with the ancient intelligence, it had changed everything. Cadets moved with a new kind of caution. You could see it in their eyes. Some were still shaken, their movements hesitant, while others stared at Jarek and Core with a look of pure, unadulterated respect. Humanity had just proven itself in a way no one, not even the most optimistic among us, could have ever imagined. Jarek walked through the central hall, his boots echoing softly on the polished floor. Core was right there at his side, a silent, powerful presence. The bond between them, forged in fire and fear, felt stronger than any metal, more real than the ground beneath their feet. In Jarek's hands, the obsidian core pulsed with a soft, gentle light, a constant reminder of the impossible challenges they had faced and overcome, and the incredible power that is born from courage and trust. Instructor Thalor appeared before them, his tall frame blocking the corridor. His expression was, as always, unreadable, a mask of stoicism. For a long moment, he just stood there, observing them. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken thoughts. Finally, he spoke, his voice low but carrying the weight of his authority. "You have done more than just survive, human," he said, his gaze fixed on Jarek. "You have redefined what it means to be alive in this galaxy. Generations from now, other species will remember this day. They will remember what you did here." Jarek could only nod, the sheer enormity of their journey still settling upon him. This facility, this crucible, had tested him in ways he could never have conceived. It had broken him down and rebuilt him, and through it all he had discovered a fundamental truth: the human heart. Our unique capacity to trust, to connect, to fight for something so much greater than ourselves, was a force stronger than fear, more potent than brute strength, and even more clever than an ancient godlike intelligence. Out in the training yard, a quiet revolution was taking place. Inspired by the unbreakable bond between Jarek and Core, other cadets were cautiously approaching their own bonded creatures. They were no longer seeing monsters or tools, but potential partners. The bond Jarek had forged was no longer a one-of-a-kind anomaly. It had become a symbol, a new standard to aspire to. It was proof that humans could rise above their perceived weaknesses, that they could not only survive but thrive where countless others had failed. But from a distant observation tower, shadows stirred. The ancient intelligence had retreated, yes, but it had not been destroyed. It had learned something profound from its defeat: that humans were dangerously unpredictable, astonishingly resourceful, and possessed a brand of fearlessness that no machine, no alien species, and no cosmic guardian could ever fully anticipate or compute. We were the galaxy's wild card. Jarek and Kor stood atop a high balcony, the cool night air on their faces as they gazed out at the alien horizon. The twin moons hung in the sky like giant pearls, casting long, shimmering reflections across the metallic architecture of the facility. Kor nudged Jarek gently with its head, a silent reminder that their journey was far from over. This was just a new beginning. "I wonder what comes next," Jarek whispered into the quiet, more to himself than to his companion. The creature responded with a soft, guttural sound, a low growl that almost sounded like a laugh. They had survived impossible odds, stared into the abyss and hadn't flinched. But the galaxy was vast, teeming with unknown dangers and limitless opportunities. And somewhere out there, among those glittering stars, a new story was just beginning. It was a story of humanity, no longer the galaxy's underdog, but a species that could face the universe itself, standing side by side with their allies, fearless and unbroken. The legend of Jarek and Kor was only the beginning. Humanity had awakened, and the galaxy would never be the same. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from across the cosmos. See you next time.